Night fell over the metropolis like a heavy, damp cloak, wrapping around the gleaming skyscrapers and, even more tightly, the dark alleys where the city's forgotten sought shelter. In one of those alleys, lit only by the faint glow of a distant lamppost, lay Laura, stretched across a damp piece of cardboard. Her eyes, once filled with youthful light, now carried the weight of 20 years of solitude and abandonment, mirroring the harsh sidewalks that had been her only home. At 25, life had given her nothing but loss. Her mother, taken by a cold and merciless disease. Her father, a distant shadow she barely remembered. Her only companions were hunger gnawing at her stomach and the cold freezing her bones, a constant reminder of her invisibility in the world. As she tried to warm her hands with her own breath, a sleek black car slid down the main street, stopping abruptly at the corner of the alley. The vehicle screamed wealth, a striking contrast to the misery surrounding Laura. From inside emerged a tall, elegant figure wrapped in a fur coat that seemed to defy modesty. It was Sophia, her twin sister, though Laura didn't know it. Sophia's perfectly styled hair and marble-carved gaze radiated superiority. She carried an air of power and disdain, her sharp eyes sweeping the alley, not with curiosity, but with practiced impatience, as if searching for something that deeply annoyed her. In her hand was a sealed envelope, its silver edges gleaming under the weak light. Sophia's story was different. Raised in luxury as the only daughter of a construction tycoon who indulged her every whim, she had never known the pain of deprivation. Her father, Mr. Armando, a shrewd and ruthless man, had built his empire on the ruins of others' dreams, and Sophia was his worthy successor. The envelope held the key to the one thing still bothering her, a clause in her maternal grandfather's will. A clause that spoke of a sister. Armando had tried to hide the existence of the abandoned child, Laura, but the grandfather's lawyer, a man of unshakable principles, insisted on carrying out the old man's final wish. The inheritance would only be released if Sophia found her sister, and both appeared together at the will's reading within 7 days. To Sophia, this was an insult, a stain on her flawless lineage. She didn't want a sister, especially not one living on the streets. It was an obligation, an obstacle to be removed before she could finally claim the fortune she believed was rightfully hers. Sensing his daughter's irritation, Armando had hired detectives to track down Laura, but with strict orders not to claim her until the last possible moment, minimizing the risk of Laura demanding a larger share of the inheritance. That was the plan. The detective, a burly man with watchful eyes, pointed toward the frail figure curled on the ground. There she is, Miss Sophia. Identity confirmed. Laura dos Santos. Sophia wrinkled her nose in disgust, as if Laura's very existence was a personal offense. So pathetic, she muttered without restraint. Laura, hearing the commotion and voices, slowly lifted her head. Her eyes met Sophia's for the briefest moment. A spark of something unexplainable passed between them, an instinctive recognition of a deep connection, though neither understood it yet. To Laura, the elegant woman seemed like an apparition from another world, a brutal reminder of the social abyss dividing them. Come on, detective. We don't have time. Get her ready for the reading of the will. And make sure she understands what's expected of her. I don't want any trouble. Sophia's voice was cold, sharp, stripped of any trace of humanity. Her command was clear. Laura would be a pawn in her game of chess, a tool to secure her fortune. The detective stepped toward Laura, who instinctively recoiled. You're coming with us, girl. It's about an inheritance. Your fate is about to change, for better or worse. Laura didn't understand the words, only the authority and chill in his voice. Fear, her constant companion, tightened around her heart. She didn't know what awaited her, but deep inside, a resilient force, the same one that had kept her alive on the streets, whispered that her journey was only beginning. And that meeting this elegant stranger, her blood sister, was just the prologue to a story far greater than either of them could imagine. But could Laura truly adapt to a world of wealth and intrigue? And what did inheritance really mean to someone who had never owned anything at all? The truth was about to surface, and with it, secrets buried for decades would come to light, powerful enough to shake the foundations of two lives that couldn't be more different. The detective reached out his hand, and Laura, hesitant, finally stood up, feeling the stiffness of muscles hardened by cold and exhaustion. Each step away from the alley seemed to pull her deeper into a world she had never known, a universe of Persian rugs, crystal chandeliers, and walls lined with polished wood. The black car slid once more through the city, this time into the most sophisticated neighborhoods, where luxury buildings and glowing storefronts dazzled with an almost blinding brightness. Discomfort pulsed through Laura's body, as if every fiber reminded her she didn't belong there. And yet, a timid curiosity sparked inside her, a small part of her that had always wished life could be different. Across from her, Sophia crossed her legs elegantly, her gaze fixed on the city unfolding beyond the glass. Her face betrayed no emotion, but for an instant, the slight crease of her brow revealed that this meeting with Laura was not as simple as she had imagined. There was something about this dirty, starving girl that unsettled her, as if Laura's very presence exposed cracks and weaknesses Sophia had never wanted to face. In the luxury apartment, where the silence of wealth and power seemed deafening, the family lawyer waited. Documents were neatly arranged on a mahogany desk. He studied Laura with a mixture of compassion and professionalism, knowing she was about to step into a world where innocence and social cruelty collided in brutal ways. Sophia, impatient, placed the envelope on the table, her delicate fingers tapping against the paper with restrained frustration. Here it is. The reading of the will must begin. I trust Miss Dos Santos understands this is a unique moment in her life. Every word matters. Laura swallowed hard, her stomach tightening with tension. It wasn't just wealth at stake, it was the possibility of a new world, one that had always felt out of reach, but now lay opening before her. The lawyer began to read, his deep voice filling the room with echoes of tradition and authority. Each clause sounded like a decree, each mention of inheritance carried a near-mythic weight. Sophia watched Laura closely, evaluating every reaction, every gesture, every blink. To her, this was a test, a game of patience and control. Her newly found sister was not to question, not to challenge, not to interrupt. But Laura, even with fear written in her eyes, held herself with an unexpected strength. Every word from the lawyer seemed to awaken a silent courage inside her, a force not expressed in speech, but in the firmness of her gaze. For the first time, Sophia felt a chill run down her spine, something no wealth or power could shield her from. In those tired, hungry eyes was an authenticity that threatened everything she had ever known. When the reading ended, a heavy silence fell over the room. The lawyer closed the folder and looked at both women with a seriousness that left no room for objection. The inheritance will be divided only if both of you agree to fulfill the conditions set by the testator. This is his final wish, and nothing can change it. Sophia pressed her lips together, masking the irritation burning inside her like a contained flame. To her, this clause was an insult, a blemish on her carefully planned life. But Laura, upon hearing the word conditions, lifted an eyebrow. Curiosity now outweighed her fear. "What conditions?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly, yet firm enough to impress everyone in the room. The lawyer's lips curved into a faint smile, as if savoring the sincerity of a spirit untainted by the world. "The main condition is simple. You must work together to fulfill your grandfather's last wish. And in doing so, the truth about the past will come to light." A shiver ran down Sophia's spine. Work together? The truth about the past? Each word echoed with unexpected force, a silent threat to her entire, well-orchestrated life. Laura, however, felt something entirely different, possibility. For the first time, hope flickered amid the chaos of her emotions, a glimpse of a future where she could exist beyond the streets, beyond hunger, beyond loneliness. And in that moment, though neither of them fully realized it, an invisible thread began to weave between the two sisters. A fragile connection binding lives divided by privilege and poverty, now united by a shared destiny. It was the beginning of a story that would change everything, a story of secrets, rivalries, and perhaps redemption. But one question lingered in the air, silent and powerful. How far would each of them go to protect her own interests? And in this dangerous game of inheritance, power, and family revelations, who would truly emerge victorious? Laura felt the weight of the lawyer's words still hanging in the air, as if every syllable were a silent warning that nothing would come easily. Sophia, impatient, rose abruptly, her skirt gliding across the polished floor, her heels striking like a gavel against stone. "We don't have time for sentiment," she said, her voice sharp as glass. "Every minute counts. We need to begin now." Laura swallowed hard, fully aware that this refined world offered not just luxury, but invisible rules, codes of behavior she had never learned. Yet within her, there was something else, a quiet determination, an instinct that kept her steady in the face of the unknown. Their first task seemed simple on the surface: visit their grandfather's former residence, now turned into a private museum, where documents, photographs, and objects of sentimental value would be examined for clues to the testator's true intentions. Sophia led Laura into the car but kept her distance, both physically and emotionally. Every unpolished gesture from her sister of the streets felt like an unspoken insult to her flawless elegance, and every hesitant glance from Laura seemed to challenge the superiority Sophia believed she possessed. When they arrived at the old mansion, Laura was struck by the sight of its imposing facade. Stone towers, windows rising like watchful eyes, and a carefully preserved garden all gave the impression that this place guarded secrets meant only for those who truly belonged to the family. As they walked through halls adorned with tapestries and portraits, Laura felt a strange mix of admiration and discomfort. Each detail seemed to tell a story, but was she part of that story, or merely an intruder passing through? Sophia watched her carefully, her expression unreadable, though inside, a storm brewed. It was unsettling to realize that, even without refinement or sophistication, Laura possessed a sharp intuition, a perception that challenged the control Sophia clung to so fiercely. In their grandfather's study, surrounded by stacks of old books and furniture heavy with history, the lawyer presented the first challenge. "There is a series of letters to be read," he explained. "Some hold direct instructions. Others contain clues you must interpret together. This is the beginning of the test." Laura reached for the first letter. The rough paper beneath her fingers reminded her of the streets and the cold that had followed her for years. The handwriting, elegant, precise, was from a world she had never known. Yet as she read the first lines, she felt an odd connection. The grandfather spoke of family, of responsibility, of choices that shaped destinies. Sophia read along with narrowed eyes, pride and irritation battling for dominance. Every word Laura voiced with raw sincerity seemed to underline a truth the world often ignored: wealth did not replace character, and power did not guarantee wisdom. Tension built between them. And yet, in fleeting moments, something unexpected emerged, silent sparks of complicity, when a clue demanded joint interpretation, or when an emotion slipped through unspoken. But it didn't take long for the first true conflict to surface. One letter carried a devastating revelation: details of shady business, old debts, and a secret capable of destroying Sophia's reputation if exposed. The envelope trembled in Laura's hands as she realized there was far more at stake than financial inheritance. Sophia stiffened at the words, her eyes flashing with fear and rage. "You don't understand," she hissed, her voice nearly a contained roar. "This isn't a game, and you can't just—" Laura cut her off, her calm surprising everyone in the room. "Then teach me. If you want me to take part, you'll have to show me the rules." For a moment, silence engulfed the study, heavy with meaning. Sophia, so used to commanding and controlling everything around her, found herself, for the first time, genuinely challenged. And in that quiet defiance, the dynamic between them shifted from sheer confrontation to a battle of wit, perception, and courage. A battle where every step, every decision, could alter both their destinies forever. Laura felt the letter trembling in her hands, and for the first time, she realized the inheritance wasn't just about money or luxury. It was about choices, consequences, and truths that had been buried for decades. Her grandfather's words echoed with unexpected force. They spoke of missing people, shady deals, and broken promises, revealing that behind the family's shine and prestige lay deep wounds and secrets capable of destroying reputations. Sophia, rigid as a marble statue, blinked rapidly, trying to mask the anxiety boiling inside her. She had never expected someone like Laura to react with such calm to information that would have left anyone else in panic. "You don't understand anything." Sophia burst out, her rage finally spilling over as she shoved the letter back onto the table. "These are things that aren't for you. They're for me, for our family." Laura held her gaze steady. "Then teach me. If you want me here, I'll have to understand, not just obey." Her bluntness struck Sophia with a strange mix of respect and resentment. She could never admit it, but there, in front of the sister life had ripped from her knowledge, Sophia recognized something undeniable. Laura had courage. The kind of courage that neither wealth nor luxury nor arrogance could ever create. The first clue led them to an old industrial property, one of their grandfather's warehouses from before he built his modern empire. The lawyer explained that certain instructions could only be uncovered through inspection of the objects and documents stored there, and that collaboration was not optional. Each sister would have to contribute with her unique abilities. Sophia, her expression tense, nodded. Laura, for the first time sensing the smell of a real adventure, not just survival, gripped the detective's hand and followed her sister without hesitation. When they arrived at the warehouse, the gulf between Laura and Sophia's worlds became painfully clear. The place, abandoned for years, reeked of mold and rust. To Laura, it felt familiar. The scent reminded her of alleys and derelict shelters she had once clung to for survival. To Sophia, it was a shock. Dirty walls, shattered windows, and the metallic echo of lonely footsteps were almost unbearable. But there was something else in that space, something neither of them yet understood. Among the dusty boxes and yellowed files, Laura discovered an old diary with a worn leather cover, forgotten for decades. Opening it, she froze at the first page, a familiar signature. Her mother's. The woman Laura barely remembered, yet still carried in broken fragments of memory. Sophia peered over her sister's shoulder, her face pale and strained. This shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. But Laura was transfixed. Each entry told not only of her mother's life, but also revealed hidden details of the family's past, forbidden loves, broken alliances, and above all, clues to the real reason Laura had been cut off from her lineage. The revelation struck like a silent, devastating blow. Her separation hadn't been an accident, nor an arbitrary decision. Someone within the family had decided Laura should never know who she truly was. Sophia staggered back, her fingers trembling. "So all this time, you always existed? And no one told me." The vulnerability in her voice was new, almost human, and it startled them both. Laura, seeing the impact of her own existence on the Golden Sister, felt a mix of triumph and compassion. This wasn't just about revenge, nor even justice. It was about truth finally rising to the surface, carrying with it a quiet power that would forever alter the balance between them. The detective, ever watchful, stood in silence. He knew that what was unfolding now went far beyond inheritance. It was about the rebuilding of bonds, the unveiling of secrets long buried, and the redefinition of what family truly meant for two women so different, yet bound inseparably by blood. And there, among forgotten papers and dust-laden memories, a new question arose, silent, threatening. Who would truly hold control over the family's destiny once all the secrets came to light? The diary lay open on the warehouse's rusted table, its fragile pages breathing out secrets that had long cried for release. Laura, her fingers trembling, turned the sheets as though uncovering not just a past, but the mirror of her own identity. Her mother's words described not only the pain of a forced separation, but also the existence of dark forces within the family itself, forces that had shaped her fate. There were mentions of Armando, Sophia's father, a man who, according to the diary, had not only rejected Laura, but had done everything in his power to erase her from the family's official history. Hearing her father's name wrapped in such grave accusations, Sophia felt the ground sway beneath her feet. Her entire life had been built on the pride of being heir to an empire, on the certainty that her father was a man of vision and strength. Now, each line of the diary corroded that image like acid. She tried to stand firm, but her voice betrayed her anguish. No, my father wouldn't do this. There must be some mistake, some twisted interpretation. Laura lifted her eyes, steady. I spent 25 years believing I'd been forgotten by the world. Now I discover I was forgotten on purpose. Don't talk to me about mistakes, Sophia. The only thing here has been lies. The silence that followed was heavy. The detective cleared his throat, pointing toward another box in the corner of the warehouse. Inside, they found old photographs, some still in black and white, capturing the family at parties and grand events. Smiling faces, raised glasses, lavish dresses. But buried at the bottom was a picture that froze them both. Laura's mother, visibly pregnant, leaning against a window with a distant gaze. And beside her was not Armando. It was another man. A stranger's face, yet one with an undeniable presence. Sophia raised a hand to her mouth, stunned. This means that she couldn't finish. The weight of the revelation spoke for itself. The blood in Laura's veins might not be the same as hers. The will hadn't only sought to reunite two sisters torn apart by fate, it might have been crafted to expose that even the official truth about paternity was a lie. The lawyer, who had remained calm until now, finally spoke. Ladies, understand this. The testator knew the impact these discoveries would have. That is why he required you to walk this path together. This is not only about material wealth. It's about bringing to light the truth buried by convenience and power. Sophia's heart raced. If it were true, if Laura wasn't Armando's legitimate daughter, then everything she believed she owned by right was at risk. The name, the inheritance, the social standing, everything could collapse. Part of her wanted to scream, to drive Laura away, to rip the diary apart and burn the photographs. But something was stronger than hatred, doubt. And that doubt gnawed at her soul like nothing ever had. Laura, on the other hand, felt a strange liberation. For years, she had carried the crushing weight of rejection, believing she simply hadn't been worthy of being remembered. Now, she realized it hadn't been her fault at all. It had been a cruel choice made by others. The pain remained, but it now carried new meaning. For the first time, she didn't see herself as a victim of fate, but as a survivor of a web of lies that was unraveling before her eyes. When they left the warehouse, the night felt denser, the air heavier. The city lights in the distance offered no comfort. Sophia walked in silence, her certainties collapsing, while Laura, though afraid, held her head high, like someone finally stepping into a greater purpose. As the detective opened the car door, he muttered almost under his breath. What we uncovered today is only the surface. There's more, much more, lurking in this family's shadows. And both sisters knew, even without admitting it, that each new discovery would not only force them to face the truth, but also to face each other in a battle where love, hate, loyalty, and ambition would become irreversibly entwined. The drive back from the warehouse was silent, but far from peaceful. Inside the car, the air felt thick, weighed down by thoughts neither sister dared to voice. Sophia stared out the window, her own reflection staring back like a stranger. With every mile, the sense that her entire life had been built on a foundation of lies grew stronger. Laura, meanwhile, clutched the diary to her chest as though protecting a treasure, not for its material value, but for its meaning. It was the only voice of her mother left to her, containing answers that could change everything. When they arrived at Sophia's luxurious apartment, they were greeted by its usual coldness. Marble floors gleaming under golden lights, imposing silence, and the absence of any human warmth. Laura shrank at the excess, each detail a glaring reminder that this was not her world. Yet, at the same time, she felt something new, not envy, but indignation. How could two lives have been so unequal, dictated by someone else's decision? That night, Laura decided to continue reading the diary in secret. Sophia had fallen asleep after hours of masked insomnia, and the apartment finally surrendered to silence. Sitting on the edge of the bed prepared for her, Laura reopened the pages. Her mother's words spoke of a man named Miguel, the same one from the photograph in the warehouse. He wasn't just a friend or colleague. He was described with passion, someone who had offered comfort and refuge at a time when her mother felt suffocated by family pressure. Then came the sentence that froze Laura. Miguel knows about the child. He said that if fate ever separates us, he will do everything to find her and show her she was never alone. Laura's heart raced. Could Miguel still be alive? If so, could he be her real father, or at least someone who knew the truth about her origins? The revelation opened a new door, a path that neither the lawyer nor Sophia seemed prepared to follow. The next morning, Laura confronted her sister. Sophia, we need to find Miguel. He can clarify everything. It's here, written by our mother. She held out the diary, pointing to the passage. Sophia, still pale from a sleepless night, pressed her lips together. You don't understand what this means. If this man is still alive, and if he really is who you think, he could destroy everything. Not just for me, but for you too. I have nothing to lose, Laura replied, steady. But I have everything to discover. They faced each other, and in that moment, the first true rift appeared. It wasn't just a matter of differing interpretations, it was the beginning of a silent war. Sophia wanted to preserve the empire, protect the name, maintain appearances. Laura wanted the truth, no matter the cost. Later, the lawyer confirmed that there were records of a Miguel in the testator's old notes. He wasn't just a shadow, but a real man, Miguel de Alencar, a former business partner who had mysteriously disappeared after a public falling out with Armando. The detective was tasked with finding him. Days later, he returned with news. Miguel lived in seclusion, in a small town far from the world, as if fleeing from old ghosts. The journey to him was tense. Sophia didn't want to go, but the deadline imposed by the will was running, and she knew ignoring the clue could cost her not only the inheritance, but the chance to control the family's fate. Laura, on the other hand, felt hope grow with every mile. Perhaps, for the first time, she would meet someone who could truly call her a daughter. When they arrived, the scene could not have contrasted more with the luxury of their recent lives. A simple wooden house, worn by time, surrounded by ancient trees whispering in the wind. A man with graying hair and tired eyes opened the door. Yet when his gaze fell on Laura, it filled with an emotion long unseen, recognition. You, he murmured, his voice choked. You have her eyes. The silence that followed was devastating. Sophia swallowed hard, feeling that the story she had built her entire life on was about to be turned inside out. Laura, on the other hand, felt her heart explode with questions, fear, and hope. It was the beginning of a new chapter, where the true past would start to emerge, and with it, a truth capable of either dividing the sisters completely or forcing them to face, side by side, the common enemy hidden in the family's shadows. The wind howled through the trees surrounding the simple house that afternoon, making the branches groan. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Miguel sat in a worn wooden chair, his body hunched, as if years of silence and regret weighed heavily on his shoulders. Laura, seated across from him, clutched her mother's diary, her heart racing. Sophia, beside her, kept her arms crossed, her gaze cold, as though the visit were a personal affront. Miguel hesitated before speaking, but when he finally did, his deep voice filled the small room with the weight of painful memories. I loved your mother, he said, staring intently at Laura. More than anything. But her world, the Santos world, would never have allowed her to live that love. Armando was not just a jealous husband, he was obsessed with power and appearances. When he discovered there was someone else in her life, he did everything to erase her. And to erase you too. Tears welled in Laura's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Each word confirmed what she had always feared. Her suffering had not been an accident, but a choice. Sophia clenched her fists. You expect me to believe this? That my father, the man who built everything we have, would be capable of destroying a child. Miguel's eyes hardened. Your father wasn't just capable, girl. He did it. He used his influence, bought silence, manipulated documents. If it weren't for your grandfather's will, Laura, you would have been erased forever. The words fell like stones between them. Sophia rose, pacing back and forth, trying to control the storm inside her. Part of her wanted to defend her father at all costs. But another part, with every revelation, recalled his coldness, his curt commands, the way Armando had always treated her more as an heir than a daughter. Laura's voice trembled as she asked, "Why didn't you look for me, Miguel? If you loved me, why did you leave me on the streets?" The man closed his eyes, pain etched in every line of his face. "I tried. I searched. But your father was faster. He told me you had died at birth. And when I tried to pursue you, I was threatened. My businesses were destroyed, my accounts frozen, my entire life fell apart. I survived in silence, believing I had lost you forever. Until now." The silence that followed was heavier than before. Sophia, despite all her pride, could not hide the doubt in her expression. Laura, on the other hand, felt something new stir within her, not just pain, but anger. The lawyer, who had remained discreet until now, finally spoke. "All of this confirms the purpose of the will. Your grandfather knew the truth had been hidden and wanted to force this meeting. But there is another part of the document that has not yet been revealed, a final clause that depends on the decision of you two." Sophia turned sharply. "What decision?" The lawyer took a deep breath. "The inheritance will not be granted if you merely sign papers. You must both unite to expose the truth. There are dossiers, evidence, hidden contracts, everything compiled by the testator. But you can only access them together. If one refuses, everything is lost." Shock rippled through both of them. Laura felt the weight of the choice. After all, exposing the truth could be her redemption, but it also meant diving into a war against a powerful man like Armando. Sophia, meanwhile, faced an abyss: defend her father and preserve her empire, or ally with her sister and risk losing everything. Miguel leaned forward, his voice steady despite his age. "Don't think this is just about you. If you do nothing, history will repeat itself. More lives will be destroyed by this family's pride and greed." The two sisters looked at each other in silence. In that moment, they knew they were on opposite sides, but bound by the same fate. Time, the will, and now the truth imposed by Miguel pushed them toward an inevitable choice. And the most unsettling truth was knowing that, whatever they decided, nothing would ever be the same again. The night Laura and Sophia returned from visiting Miguel was sharp and cold, the wind cutting through the city like an invisible blade. High atop one of the most luxurious penthouses, Armando stared out at the city lights through the panoramic window, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His face remained impassive, but his eyes, cold and calculating, betrayed the fury boiling inside him. He already knew. His informants had told him that Sophia had not only found Laura, but that the two of them had gone after Miguel. The name he had spent years trying to erase now resurfaced like a ghost, ready to ruin everything. Armando gripped the glass so tightly that the crystal nearly shattered. He summoned one of his most trusted men, Renato, an executive in the public eye, but in the shadows, his strategist for war. They're together. Even Sophia, my so carefully trained daughter, has let weakness guide her. And Miguel, that bastard, never knew how to die in peace. Renato adjusted his glasses and spoke cautiously. "We need to act fast, sir. If the old Santos documents really exist and fall into the wrong hands, the empire could crumble in a matter of days." Armando paced slowly across the room, each step echoing like a prelude to disaster. "I will not allow a street-born bastard to destroy what I built with blood and iron. And if Sophia lacks the courage to do what is necessary, then she will be discarded along with the other one." Meanwhile, in the apartment, Laura felt an unsettling tension. The meeting with Miguel had brought answers, but also even bigger questions. She knew the path ahead would be dangerous, but she still didn't understand the full extent. Sophia, for her part, avoided looking at her sister. The internal conflict tore her apart, protect her father, or accept the truth slowly eroding the walls of her conviction. In the early hours, an unexpected phone call changed everything. A rough, anonymous voice said only, "You're in danger. Armando already knows. Get out before it's too late." Laura froze, but Sophia pressed the phone to her ear, anger overriding fear. "He wouldn't dare against me," she said, though her voice faltered. Laura met her gaze, serious. "You still don't understand, Sophia. To him, you were never a daughter. You were always an heir. And heirs can be replaced." Outside, 2 black cars waited at the corner, their headlights off. The men inside were not there to talk. The night had barely begun when Laura noticed something strange outside the window. 2 black cars were parked at the corner, too still, too silent. The street, usually bustling, seemed suspended, as if waiting for something inevitable. "Sophia," she whispered, discreetly pulling back the curtain. "I think we're being watched." Sophia, trying to maintain her composure while pouring a glass of wine, turned with irritation. "You're imagining things. This building is secure. It has 24-hour surveillance." But when she approached the window herself and saw the silhouettes inside the cars, her blood ran cold. She recognized the pattern: drivers motionless, posture tense. It was the same type of surveillance her father used to intimidate rivals and rebellious allies. Before they could react, the hallway lights went out. The silence was broken by the metallic sound of heavy footsteps climbing the fire escape stairs. Laura recoiled, her heart hammering. "They're coming." Sophia, still struggling with the thought that her own father could be behind this, grabbed her sister's arm. "Stay behind me. I know how to handle this." But even the tremor in her voice revealed she wasn't as certain as she sounded. A crash shook the main door. Then another. By the third, the hinges began to give way. It was then that the detective, never one to trust coincidences, appeared out of nowhere. He had returned discreetly to the apartment, anticipating trouble. With a swift gesture, he opened a path through the service corridor. "Now, run." Laura didn't think twice. She grabbed her mother's diary and pulled Sophia by the hand. The two dashed through the emergency exit just as the main door finally gave way, revealing masked men storming in, weapons raised. The narrow corridor echoed with hurried footsteps. Laura's heart pounded, but a strange clarity filled her mind. For the first time, she wasn't running from hunger or cold. She was running from a powerful enemy, someone determined to silence her because now she held something priceless, the truth. Sophia, running beside her, glanced around wide-eyed. Her life of luxury had never prepared her to sprint through tight corridors, stumble over old buckets, or inhale the scent of dust and rust. Yet there she was, hand in hand with the sister she had always despised, running for her life. They reached the lower garage, only to find the black cars blocking the exit. The detective pulled out a small key and pointed to a discreet vehicle hidden behind a pillar. "Get in. Fast." The tires screeched as the car tore through the side gate before the masked men could react. The rear window shattered from a bullet impact, but miraculously, no one was hurt. Inside the car, the silence was suffocating. Laura gasped for breath, clutching the diary to her chest. Sophia, pale, finally let slip the thought she had been denying from the start. "My father really wants to kill us." The detective, focused on the road, answered without looking back. "And this is just the beginning. He doesn't just want to silence you. He wants to erase every trace of the truth. We need to find the dossiers before he does." Laura and Sophia exchanged a glance. For the first time, they were not just sisters forced to tolerate each other. They were fugitives, united against a common enemy. And they knew that the battle for the inheritance had just turned into a fight for survival. The car cut through the deserted avenues like an arrow, slicing through the silence of the early morning. Headlights reflected off the glass facades of buildings that watched in silence as the two heiresses and the detective, now risking his life for them, sped through the city. Laura clutched the diary to her chest like a talisman. The pages were worn, but their weight seemed to grow with every passing minute. It was more than memories of her mother. It was the key to a past her father wanted buried forever. Sophia, still trembling, couldn't shake the sound of gunfire from her mind. Her perfect world, full of luxury and control, had crumbled in a matter of hours. What remained was the brutal awareness that her father wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice her if it meant keeping the empire intact. The detective driving the car broke the silence. We can't go back to the apartment or anywhere obvious. Armando has eyes on every corner of this city. So, where do we go? Asked Laura, trying to stay calm. There's a contact of mine in a neighboring town. Someone who owes me favors. Discreet. No direct ties to Armando. We can regroup there, at least for a few hours. Sophia exhaled, staring into the void ahead. We're running like criminals. He managed to invert everything. We're the hunted, when he's the one who should be behind bars. Laura looked at her seriously, recognizing the irony in her words. Now you understand. He was never just a father. He's always been a predator. And now we're the prey he wants to eliminate. The car sped along secondary roads, leaving the capital for the countryside. The night seemed endless, a dark shroud covering their uncertainty. Then, on a sharp curve, a motorcycle appeared alongside them, dangerously close. Damn it, shouted the detective, swerving the wheel to avoid it. They found us faster than I expected. 2 more vehicles closed in from behind, tightening the trap. Laura gripped the seat, while Sophia bit her lip to keep from screaming. The roar of engines was deafening, more reminiscent of a hunt than a simple chase. At that moment, an unexpected figure entered the scene. An old Jeep came from a side road, intercepting the motorcycle with a sudden maneuver, sending the rider crashing onto the asphalt. The Jeep swung into position between their car and the pursuers, clearing a path for their escape. The detective didn't waste the opportunity. He floored the accelerator as the Jeep covered them. When they finally put some distance between themselves and their pursuers, he exhaled deeply, still unsure who the unlikely savior had been. Miles later, they stopped at an abandoned gas station to catch their breath. The Jeep soon pulled up beside them. A woman with gray hair and a steady gaze stepped out. Her face bore the marks of battles fought long ago, but her movements still radiated strength. Laura stared, confused. Who are you? The woman offered a faint, tired smile. You don't know me, but I knew your mother well. She knew this day would come and left instructions for me. Sophia's eyes widened in disbelief. You're saying she knew about us? Not everything, the woman replied, adjusting her coat. But she knew enough to be ready. Her name was Helena, and if you're here now, it's because destiny has decided it's time for Armando to pay for everything. The silence that followed was almost sacred. For the first time, Laura and Sophia felt they weren't completely alone. A new piece had entered the board, and perhaps this piece could turn the game. The abandoned gas station was immersed in silence, broken only by the distant chirping of crickets and the wind whistling through broken windows. Inside, the weak light of a flashlight illuminated the tense faces of the 2 sisters and the mysterious Helena. Laura was the first to break the silence. You knew my mother, so tell me, who is she really? All I have are fragmented memories and this diary. Helena's eyes lingered on the worn notebook in Laura's hands, and for a moment, the hardness of her face softened into a shadow of tenderness. She was stronger than you can imagine. Your mother was a woman who loved deeply, but also had the courage to face monsters. Monsters? Sophia repeated, suspicious. Yes, Helena replied firmly. Armando didn't build his empire just with contracts and concrete. There was corruption, fraud, blackmail, and death. Your mother discovered it all because she worked alongside him in the beginning. She helped build part of this empire, believing they were creating a future for you. But when she realized the rot behind every stone, she tried to escape. Laura pressed the diary to her chest, feeling each word like both a blade and an embrace. And that's why he left her, or killed her? Helena looked away, breathing deeply. I can't say he killed her, but I can guarantee he destroyed her. Armando isolated her, stole her resources, and spread lies. When she finally managed to escape, she was already sick, weakened. And yet, she had the strength to leave clues, like this diary. Sophia, silent until now, lifted her chin in anger. So you're saying my whole life has been a lie? That everything my father gave me came at the cost of innocent's blood. Helena met her gaze with unwavering sternness. Not just what he gave you, but also what he took from her. Your mother never wanted you to grow up apart. It was Armando who made that decision because he knew that together, you could be too dangerous. The words hung heavy in the air. Laura felt her eyes well up. She had always imagined her story had holes, but never in such a brutal way. The detective, who had been watching in silence, finally spoke. And the dossiers? Miguel mentioned they could destroy Armando. Do you know where they are? Helena nodded slowly. I helped hide them. They're copies of contracts, recordings, documents tying Armando to crimes that could never otherwise be proven. Your mother worked for years in secret to collect everything, risking her life. Your grandfather's will was the final piece of the puzzle, a guarantee that one day the two of you would be forced to reunite and, perhaps, finish what she started. Laura exchanged an intense look with Sophia. For the first time, she felt there was a mission greater than mere survival. This wasn't about money or inheritance. It was about justice. Sophia, however, was torn. Her face betrayed the internal struggle between loyalty to her father and the brutal evidence before her. She stood abruptly, pacing back and forth. You talk as if it's simple. But this man isn't just powerful. He's feared. Facing him is like facing an army. And yet, Helena said firmly, you are the only ones capable of taking him down. Because he underestimated the power that exists when blood reunites. He thought he could keep you apart forever. Now, together, you are the greatest threat he has ever faced. Laura took a deep breath, looking at her sister. So it's this, Sophia. Either we unite, or he wins. The silence that followed felt like an unspoken pact, an invisible thread connecting these two very different women. Helena then opened a worn folder she had brought with her. Inside were maps, keys, and old photographs. The first dossier is in a safe. But to reach it, you'll need to face not only Armando's henchmen, but also the ghosts he left in his wake. Outside, thunder rumbled across the sky, as if the night itself recognized that a new war was about to begin. Dawn broke, painting the sky with shades of orange, but for Laura and Sophia, there was no relief. The light only revealed more clearly the weight of the decision they had just made. Helena tucked the maps into her folder, dropped her lit cigarette to the ground, and crushed it with her boot, as if closing one chapter before opening another. We have little time, she said, her voice low and practical. Armando will realize you didn't die in the attack and will tighten the siege. We need to reach the safe before he does. The detective, still wary, crossed his arms. And where is this safe, exactly? Helena pulled out one of the maps and spread it over the hood of the car. It was an old city plan, from when major constructions were still underway. With her finger, she pointed to a decommissioned industrial zone. Here. One of Armando's first construction sites. Officially abandoned, but the structure still holds secrets. That's where we hid the first dossier. Laura leaned over the map, studying it. Her heart raced. Every step was dragging her deeper into a world of conspiracies she had never chosen, but that now demanded her attention. And how do we get in? Helena raised an eyebrow. We won't get in. We're going to break in. If any of Armando's men are still guarding the place, they'll shoot first and ask questions later. That's why we need to be fast. Sophia swallowed hard. Her life had always been marked by security guards, gala parties, and elegant negotiations. Now, she was about to infiltrate an abandoned building to steal documents that incriminated her own father. The contrast was suffocating. Hours later, they reached the outskirts of the city. The warehouse loomed on the horizon like a sleeping giant, concrete walls cracked, windows covered in dust and rust. But there was something menacing in its stillness. The detective parked the car at a safe distance. Helena guided them to a side entrance, hidden behind a rusted iron gate. With precise movements, she unlocked it with an old key. Inside, the air was heavy, thick with moisture and forgotten memories. Each step echoed through the empty walls. Laura felt a shiver run down her spine. Follow me, Helena murmured. The safe is in the basement. Descending a narrow staircase, they arrived at a dimly lit corridor. At the end stood a heavy metal door, hidden behind stacks of deteriorated crates. Helena pulled a second key from her folder and inserted it into the lock, which resisted for a few seconds before yielding with a dull click. The safe was there, embedded in the wall. It wasn't large, but it carried a silent authority. Helena typed a sequence into the panel, but before she could finish, a metallic noise echoed behind them. Laura spun around, holding her breath. Silhouettes emerged from the darkness of the corridor. Armed men, 6 in total, advanced with steady steps. "I knew it wouldn't be that easy," Helena whispered, drawing a pistol from her coat. The detective did the same, positioning himself beside her. Sophia and Laura fell back, trapped between the safe and the advancing threat. One of the men grinned mockingly. "Mr. Armando sends his regards. And he wants the diary, now." Laura clutched the notebook to her chest as if her life depended on it, and perhaps it did. Helena fired first. The gunshots reverberated through the basement, mingling with the metallic screech of bullets ricocheting off the walls. Chaos erupted, and amidst the firefight, Laura and Sophia were forced to make a quick decision: fight or flee. The basement turned into a battlefield in seconds. Helena's first shot echoed like thunder, followed by the metallic crack of bullets ricocheting off the concrete walls. The smell of gunpowder filled the air, mixing with mold and rust. The detective moved quickly, using the shadows of stacked crates for cover. His shots were precise, not the work of someone panicked, but of someone accustomed to living on the edge of death. Laura and Sophia, pressed against the wall by the safe, could barely breathe. Laura's heart pounded in her ears, but an unexpected spark ignited in her chest. She didn't want to be a mere spectator of her own story. Sophia, trembling, whispered, "They're going to kill us." Laura gripped her sister's hand firmly. "No, not this time." While Helena and the detective held off the attackers, Laura noticed an iron bar lying next to the crates. Without hesitation, she grabbed it. When one of the men tried to flank them, Laura swung with all her strength. The impact sent the masked man crashing to the floor with a muffled scream. Sophia's eyes widened, shocked by her sister's courage. "Laura, help me," Laura shouted, gasping. "Or are you just going to stand there?" Adrenaline shattered Sophia's hesitation. Scanning the room, she spotted a loose chain in the corner and wrapped it around her hands. When another enemy advanced, she struck him by surprise, wrapping the chain around his arm and yanking violently. The shock on his face was enough to show that Sophia had never done anything like this before. The fight intensified. 2 men fell, but others kept advancing. Helena, with lethal precision, took down another. The detective, however, was grazed on the shoulder and fell behind a pile of crates, groaning in pain. Laura ran to him. "Are you okay?" "Just a scratch. Get to the safe," he said, pushing her with his bloodied hand. Helena seized the opening and completed the sequence on the safe's panel. With a metallic beep, the door clicked open, revealing a black folder with an old seal. "We've got what we need," she shouted. But before they could celebrate, the leader of the attackers, a tall man with a deep scar across his face, raised his weapon, aiming directly at Laura. The diary. Now. Time seemed to stop. Sophia instinctively stepped in front of her sister. "If you want it, you'll have to go through me." The man laughed disdainfully. "The spoiled daddy's girl. You're nothing without him." At that moment, Helena fired. The blast echoed, and the masked man fell, the weapon slipping from his hands. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by everyone's ragged breathing. Laura trembled, but held the diary tightly to her chest. Sophia, still standing in front of her, finally seemed to grasp the magnitude of the choice she had made in defying her father. Helena closed the safe and tucked the black folder inside her bag. "This is just the first one. Armando has dozens of men, and he won't stop until he crushes us. But now, he knows you're capable of fighting." Laura and Sophia exchanged a glance. For the first time, there was not only suspicion or hatred. There was a silent respect, born in the fire of combat. Their fate had shifted in the basement of that warehouse. And Armando, in his glass tower, had no idea of the force he was about to face. At the top of his penthouse, Armando gazed out the panoramic window as if the horizon could provide answers. But instead of clarity, the world seemed to mock him. A message buzzed on his phone, a short, shaky video showing the warehouse, the fallen bodies, and at the center, Helena holding the black folder, while Laura and Sophia backed away safely. Armando's heart raced, but not with fear. With rage. Every muscle in his body seemed to tighten with the fury of a man whose control was being challenged for the first time. He hurled the phone across the sofa, shattering the glass table. The crash echoed like the scream of a man who refused to accept defeat. "This won't stand," he roared, pacing the room. "They dared to defy me? My daughters? My empire?" Renato, his right-hand man, remained silent, observing every movement. Armando stopped, staring at him with eyes that cut like blades. "Prepare everything. Every contact, every ally, every shadow in this city. I want them caught, alive or dead, with the diary and the dossiers under my control. And Helena, she must be eliminated. She's becoming a bigger problem than I anticipated." Renato nodded. "I can mobilize infiltrated men. With our access to the corporate underworld, we can anticipate their moves. But we need to be fast. They know too much now." Armando smiled, a cold, calculating grin. "Too much? Good. Then let's make sure that learning too much costs every second of life they think they have." Meanwhile, Laura, Sophia, and Helena returned to a safe hideout, unaware of Armando's maneuvers. The adrenaline from the fight still pulsed in their bodies, but there was also a sense of triumph. They had secured the first dossier and, more importantly, survived. Helena carefully opened the black folder. Photographs, contracts, and old documents gleamed in the dim light. Every piece of paper was a part of the puzzle that could topple Armando. Laura flipped through the pages, absorbing every detail. He really built everything on lies and corruption. This will completely shake his empire. Sophia, still breathing heavily, closed her eyes for a moment. "So it's done. No turning back. We're officially at war with my own father." Helena nodded. "Exactly. But don't be mistaken. This war is more than just fighting him. There will be betrayals, traps, and sooner or later, everyone will have to choose a side." And as night fell over the city once again, Armando was already moving his pieces. He would not accept a partial defeat. Every ally would receive precise orders: track, corner, and destroy. The war between father and daughters had been officially declared, and the next move would be lethal. The following days were tense and silent. Laura, Sophia, and Helena stayed hidden in an old mansion on the outskirts of the city, reviewing the contents of the black folder. Every document, every photograph, was a piece of a web that, if used correctly, could bring Armando down. But danger lurked around every corner. The world outside was no longer safe. Helena studied the two sisters carefully. "You need to understand something. Armando will use everything he can against you. Not just force, but lies, manipulation, and, above all, division. If he can make one of you doubt the other, everything is lost." Laura faced Sophia. "How can we not doubt each other after everything?" Sophia took a deep breath, staring at their mother's diary. "Because now we have no choice. We either trust each other, or we die alone." And Armando, indeed, did not take long to strike. An anonymous phone call arrived at the mansion. A simple note, heavy with threat: "If you want to see Laura alive, bring the folder to the abandoned building at midnight. Don't try to trick me. My empire forgives nothing." Laura looked at Sophia, scared but determined. He took the obvious bait. "But we can't fall into the trap." Helena crossed her arms. "You have to fake it. The plan is to make Armando believe he has the advantage while we prepare the real counterattack. But one wrong step, and we're dead." Night fell. Under the moonlight, the trio approached the abandoned building. Laura carried only a carefully prepared copy of the black folder, designed to deceive Armando. Every shadow seemed to move, and the cutting wind carried a constant sense of alertness. Suddenly, a flash of light illuminated the area. Armando appeared at the gate, flanked by 3 armed men. I thought you'd learn to respect me, he shouted, his voice echoing through the empty warehouse. Laura felt a chill run down her spine, but Sophia held her arm firmly. Remember what we promised, together. The confrontation began immediately. Armando advanced, his henchmen holding weapons ready to strike. Laura improvised, tossing a piece of metal to create a distraction, while Sophia pushed a metal box, knocking one man down. Helena, with quick and precise movements, neutralized another. The interplay of light and shadows turned the building into a deadly maze. With every step, tension grew. They knew Armando wasn't there just to threaten, he wanted to break their trust. At a critical moment, Armando pointed at Laura. If you want to save your sister, hand over the folder. Sophia stepped forward, blocking her father with her body. No, you don't decide about her anymore. Armando's gaze hardened. Then learn to lose. But before he could fire, Helena used a light signal to trigger an escape route. Laura and Sophia ran together, breathing heavily, with Armando and his men temporarily delayed. Outside, Laura looked at Sophia, her heart pounding. We survived, together. Sophia nodded, finally letting out a brief but genuine smile. Then that's it. If we're going to fight him, it's as sisters no matter what happens. The first test had passed. But both knew that Armando would not give up. The real war had only begun, and every future decision could cost not just the inheritance, but their very lives. Dawn brought a deceptive calm. Laura and Sophia still trembled from the confrontation the night before, but the sense of victory was only temporary. Armando had not only survived the ambush, but had vanished with a rage that promised devastation. Helena knew time was short. The second dossier, larger and more dangerous, still needed to be recovered before Armando could react. This next dossier, Helena explained, isn't just protected by Armando. He has allies we don't know about. People who would do anything to keep secrets buried. You can't trust anyone except the four of us. The detective, still injured, wiped the blood from his arm and nodded. He's already mobilizing former partners. This second file is locked in a safe inside the old headquarters of one of his now-defunct companies. But the security system is almost impenetrable. Sophia frowned. Corporate security and an army of henchmen? Doesn't it seem impossible that he could capture us before we even get there? Laura, holding their mother's diary, responded firmly, then we have to be faster and smarter than him. We can't just react. We have to anticipate every move. The trio set out at dusk, driving along secondary roads to avoid leaving a trail. Every shadow, every sound along the way made Laura flinch. But the recent experience had made them more alert, more confident. Sophia, who had once relied on her father's luxury and protection, was now able to improvise and react. The transformation did not go unnoticed, even by Helena. When they arrived at the abandoned headquarters, the building looked like a deserted fortress. Broken windows revealed the dark interior, and the absolute silence made all their hearts race. Helena pulled equipment from her backpack, flashlights, masks, tools for bypassing electronic alarms. We don't have time for tests. Every minute counts, and he probably already knows we're approaching. The detective took the lead, opening a side entrance quickly and precisely. The interior corridor was full of rudimentary but deadly traps, exposed wires, motion sensors, even a dormant gas system. Fear gripped Laura's chest, but Sophia pulled her by the arm. If we hesitate, we're dead. Let's go. Finally, they reached the safe room. A state-of-the-art digital device blocked the entrance, and a panel blinked with security codes. Helena began to work, typing combinations and using her tools, but she quickly realized the system was linked to a remote alert. Any wrong attempt would send a signal straight to Armando. Laura, staring at the wall, had an idea. What if we create a distraction? Something he can see, but that doesn't reveal our real position. Sophia nodded. We can use the old sprinkler system to trigger false alarms. He'll think we've discovered the main entrance. While Helena manipulated the codes, Laura and Sophia executed the sequence, and red lights flashed down the corridors. Simulated sirens echoed, convincing Armando that the group had been detected. The safe finally opened. Inside was a larger collection of documents, photographs, and recordings, undeniable proof of Armando's corrupt empire and his responsibility for crimes including fraud, blackmail, and covering up deaths. Helena smiled, though it was a tense smile. This is the real treasure. If we can get this to the lawyer, Armando won't have control anymore. But remember, he'll do anything to get these documents back. Laura looked at Sophia, both sweaty and exhausted. For the first time, there was no doubt they were united in something larger than any family grudge. A silent pact was sealed right there, amid adrenaline, fear, and hope. But on the other side of the city, Armando received the false signals and knew his daughters had survived. And for the first time, the beast felt the dangerous sensation that he could lose. Armando didn't sleep that night. Every passing second, he felt the frustration growing like a slow poison. His closest allies had ensured that the entire city was being monitored, yet his daughters had escaped once again, and the second dossier was out of his reach. "They underestimated my reach," he muttered, clenching his fist over the mahogany table. "And those who failed me will pay dearly." Renato, his right-hand man, entered silently, tablet in hand, displaying suspicious movements. "Some of our internal contacts didn't follow instructions, sir. It seems loyalties are divided. One of them leaked information about the safe. A mistake that nearly cost us the black dossier." Armando lifted his eyes, fury consuming every trace of civility. "Traitors. I knew trusting ordinary people too much would be a mistake. But I will fix this. We will send a clear message. Anyone daring to cross me will see exactly what happens." Meanwhile, Laura, Sophia, Helena, and the detective were preparing for the next stage, delivering the documents to the trustworthy lawyer of the will, ensuring the information was safe before Armando could react. Every step was meticulously calculated, but the sense of being hunted was becoming unbearable. Alert signs began to appear, traps on the road, unknown vehicles tailing them closely, and anonymous messages attempting to induce panic. Laura clutched the diary to her chest, glancing at Sophia. "He knows. And he knows we have the dossiers." Sophia drew a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Then we need to be faster. We can't hesitate." Helena nodded. "He's desperate, which makes him dangerous. But we can also use that to our advantage. All his fury will be predictable." The first trap occurred in an isolated tunnel. 3 of Armando's vehicles blocked the exit, while armed men positioned themselves to intercept the group's car. The detective accelerated, veering through an almost invisible side passage. One of the henchmen managed to fire, shattering the windshield, but no one was seriously injured. As they fled, Laura noticed something. One of the men following them hesitated, as if torn between orders and conscience. She whispered to Helena, "He seems unsure. We can use this." Helena nodded. "Exactly. This is the first crack in his army. We need to exploit everyone." Throughout the day, internal betrayals became more evident. Some of Armando's allies began sabotaging minor actions, allowing the group to escape seemingly impossible situations. Each small victory, however, did not diminish the danger. At the safe house, Helena spread the maps again, showing alternative routes, known surveillance points, and high-risk areas. Laura and Sophia listened carefully. For the first time, they realized that despite the magnitude of the enemy, he was vulnerable, and that their unity, courage, and intelligence could be weapons as powerful as any brute force. By the end of the day, while resting, Laura looked at Sophia and said, "We're beginning to understand something. He isn't invincible." Sophia nodded, squeezing her sister's hand. "And if he underestimated the strength of 2 sisters, he's about to learn a lesson he'll never forget." On the other side of the city, Armando reviewed the reports, gripping the phone so tightly his fingers began to tremble. The sensation of total control slipping through his hands was something he had never experienced. And it made his next move all the more lethal. Night fell over the city with an almost palpable weight. Laura, Sophia, Helena, and the detective were in the safe house, reviewing every document, recording, and photograph. The tension was razor-sharp. Every lost moment meant an advantage for Armando. "We're close to the end," Helena said, looking at the map spread across the table. The final step is to get both dossiers to the lawyer and make sure he initiates legal action immediately. But Armando knows this. He will try to intercept us. Laura, clutching her mother's diary to her chest, took a deep breath. So everything we've learned so far, every step, every escape, every battle, has led us here. There's no turning back. Sophia nodded, still remembering the first time they faced their father in the abandoned building. We're ready. For the first time, we're together and he can't use our differences against us. As they planned, Helena opened a smaller folder she had kept aside. Here are the proofs your mother left as a last resort. She knew Armando would never be stopped by documents alone, so she left videos and audio recordings detailing crimes, secret accounts, illicit transfers, everything that proves his corruption beyond doubt. The detective frowned. This changes everything. With this evidence, we can not only protect the lawyer, but also make every one of Armando's allies hesitate before attacking. Laura looked at Sophia, and for the first time, there was a moment of absolute silence between them, as if all the anger, resentment, and pain had dissolved with the realization that they were about to turn the game around. The next day, they set out toward the lawyer's office, using alternative routes and false signals to throw off Armando's surveillance. Every corner, every shadow, was a reason to stay alert. The risk was tangible, but their determination pushed them forward. Across the city, Armando received the reports. His men were on high alert, and he himself had begun planning a final trap. "They think they can beat me with tricks and escapes," he said, his voice low and threatening. "But they still haven't learned that whoever controls the game controls the lives of the pawns." Meanwhile, Laura, Sophia, and Helena reached the lawyer's office without incident. The professional, visibly stunned by the amount of evidence, immediately began organizing the documents to initiate legal proceedings. Every contract, every recording, every photograph was another brick in the symbolic prison about to encircle Armando. Laura exhaled, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. "Finally, we're putting everything in its place. But we know he won't give up without a fight." Sophia, watching the lawyer's movements, said firmly, "Then let him come. He's about to find out that the strength of two united sisters is unlike anything he's ever faced." Helena smiled faintly. "It's not over yet, but now we have the advantage. Armando may control cities, but he cannot control the truth. And the truth, my dears, always finds a way." And so, as the night deepened, the board was set. Every piece was in place. The final confrontation was approaching, and no one could predict exactly how Armando would react when he realized he was finally about to lose absolute control. The sun was beginning to set when Laura, Sophia, and Helena received news that Armando had deployed his final resource, a squad of his most trusted men, the ones who had never failed, ready to intercept them on the way back to the safe house. "He finally realized he can't rely on tricks to attack us," Helena said, adjusting the backpack with the dossiers. "This is going to be direct." The detectives scanned the surroundings. "The route is dangerous, but there's an alternative through the abandoned warehouse near the port. He won't expect us to use it." Laura clutched her mother's diary to her chest, taking a deep breath. "If we're facing this, we need to do it together, like always." Sophia nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility and the trust placed in her own hands. For the first time, the rivalry between them seemed trivial compared to their shared objective. At the port, Armando waited, surrounded by his henchmen. Seeing the trio, his face twisted in a mix of rage and disbelief. "So this is where you dare to challenge my power," he roared. "You have no idea what it means to cross me." Helena moved forward first, positioning herself strategically between Armando and the sisters. "Don't underestimate the truth you tried to bury for decades." Laura and Sophia moved in perfect coordination, recalling all the lessons from past battles: trust, anticipation, and speed. Every step was calculated, every gesture synchronized. Armando barked orders, shouted, and threatened, but for the first time, his daughters did not falter. Sophia dodged a surprise attack, grabbing a henchman and using him as an improvised shield. Laura, agile and determined, took down another assailant, reclaiming one of the dossiers that had nearly been seized. The confrontation seemed endless, but Armando, despite his power, realized the advantage was slipping. Each move the sisters made was meticulously calculated, anticipating his strategies, creating a deadly dance of survival and attack. Finally, Helena executed the perfect distraction to unlock the last security door guarding access to the ship where the documents could be dispatched. Laura and Sophia, side by side, managed to place the dossiers into secure crates, ready to be immediately transported to the lawyer for legal action. Armando, enraged, tried to intervene personally, but fury blinded him. He tripped over one of his disloyal henchmen, leaving the ship's door open and vulnerable. Laura did not hesitate. She grabbed her father's arm, looking him directly in the eyes. "You underestimated the power that arises when truth and justice meet. Now you're going to see it up close." Sophia supported her sister, holding their mother's diary firmly. "It's not about power, father. It's about justice. And justice has already won inside us." For the first time, fear flashed in Armando's eyes. He stepped back, realizing that, even with his vast empire, he had lost the most important battle, the loyalty and courage of his daughters. As the ship departed with the documents, Laura and Sophia stood side by side, watching Armando disappear into the distance, powerless. The climax wasn't just a physical victory, but the confirmation that their mother's legacy had finally prevailed. The ship cut through the dark waters of the bay, carrying with it the dossiers that would reveal the full truth about Armando and his empire of corruption. Laura and Sophia stood side by side on the deck, feeling the cold night wind whip against their faces. For the first time in their lives, tension gave way to a silence filled with relief, hope, and a sense of purpose fulfilled. Helena watched the sisters, a faint smile on her lips. "You've done more than survive. You've rescued the truth, your mother's legacy, and, in a way, yourselves. Armando can control cities, companies, and people, but he cannot erase the courage that resides within you." Laura held her mother's diary to her chest, feeling every word echo in her heart. "Everything we went through, all the losses, all the battles, brought us here. I never thought I could feel this complete." Sophia, finally free from the weight of rivalry and their father's manipulation, looked at her sister and said firmly, "It doesn't matter what happened before. From now on, we decide our own path. Together." As the ship sailed away from the port, the first signs of justice began to take shape. The lawyer had received the documents, initiated legal actions, and ensured that every piece of evidence against Armando was protected. The empire built on lies and corruption was beginning to crumble, not through threats or weapons, but by the power of truth that Laura and Sophia had brought to light. In the quiet of the night, Laura and Sophia promised not only to preserve their mother's legacy, but also to rebuild their own lives, grounded in trust, courage, and justice. Helena and the detective remained allies, but the spotlight belonged to them, finally free to write their own stories. Armando, in his glass tower, watched the horizon with restrained anger and helplessness. For the first time, he realized that wealth and power are meaningless when truth gains strength. And at that moment, the final lesson from his eldest daughter and the sister he had tried to control became clear: blood, courage, and justice cannot be commanded. And so, as the city continued to pulse below, two sisters, once divided by fate and ego, now walked side by side. Inheritance, secrets, betrayals, everything had been faced and overcome. The future was open, and for the first time, it was theirs to shape. Their mother's diary, the dossiers, and the courage of Laura and Sophia proved that even the mightiest empires can crumble before the truth, and that the bond, trust, and love between sisters can transform the darkest fate into a story of victory and hope. The end. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to follow more thrilling stories like this one.